thank you all for being here. You're at First Thursdays with Sustainable Tulsa. What a good-looking crowd you are today. So thank you for being here. Today we're going to hear from the candidates for District 4 and their vision for sustainability for this district, but really how that might apply citywide. So I'm really excited about the conversation, and clearly you are too, because you're here. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a couple thank yous. We want to thank PSO as their lead sponsor for First Thursdays, as well as Cavanta. Matt, give a wave there. TCC, Creativity Center, so Mike Lemus, give a wave there. Mike McCann with McCann Law, PSO, Wind Choice, and Grog's Green Barn. Let's give them a round of applause. And wanted to welcome my board members today, so Mike Lemus, Matt Newman, Richard Gajan, and are there other board members that I'm not seeing out there? Thank you for being here, and to our volunteers and interns that are here today. Let's give them a round of applause. As a reminder, TCC does the recycling for this event for us because they have that here in this building. And we also have Full Sun Composting. Natalie, I just saw you. If you'll give a wave right there. She manages our composting. So make sure that you, after you're done with your lunch, you put them in the right locations there. Since I've seen all you visiting, we've been doing a new tradition where you introduce yourself to somebody you haven't met before or that you've been wanting to meet. It seems like you've been doing that, so we'll pass on that one today, but thank you for being so engaging today. So a few updates. Recharge, on the tables you'll see that. It's our big fundraiser this year. It is at Kane's Ballroom this year, and it will be on September 14th, and it's all about people, profit, and planet, and we love to have you there as a participant, as a sponsor, as a partner, and we're going to be having a lot of fun, but we're also going to learn just a little something. So we hope that you'll join us, and you can find out more about that on our website. We also wanted just to remind you that we do have our scorecard program that's up and rolling. It's our second year of the scorecard program where we're engaging with local businesses around their triple bottom line. We are verifying those businesses this year, and last year we had 31 companies that were verified that collectively saved $1 million and really engaged their teams around sustainability. So Tulsa is doing a lot, and we're excited to be a part of telling that story. And today we're going to hear more about the things that we can do and can tell the story about Tulsa being sustainable and things that we can do to be more sustainable. Wanted to also just announce we've had a couple positions that have been posted, and you can go to our website. Those positions, opportunities to apply will close on July 10th. So if you're interested, please get your application into us. We're looking forward to engaging with you around that. And we also just sent out an invite for an environmental consultant to work with us on our scorecard program. So if you're interested, let me know about that as well. Want to introduce our moderator. We've got Zach Stokroff with us today. He is the Vice President of Government Affairs for Tulsa Regional Chamber and represents business-driven political priorities at the local, state, and federal levels. Specializing in education, health, and workforce policy, he manages the Chamber's award-winning One Voice legislative advocacy and member engagement process, which captures the voice of the business community and regional leaders. He worked previously as a communication manager for the Chamber and the Tulsa Young Professionals Program, and as the government reporter for Tulsa World, Claremore Daily Progress, and other Tulsa area businesses. Zach serves on several nonprofits and boards and community advisory groups working on issues such as homelessness, public health, smart urban development, and freedom of the press. He has a bachelor's degree at Rogers State University and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Oklahoma. Wow. Let's invite Zach up to the front.
Thank you, Corey. That was a long bio for a moderator. Let's get our candidates up here. If you guys want to come and take your seats here, we're going to have fun today, everybody. We'll have a couple of questions, and we'll give the candidates time for some self-introductions, but then we want to hear from you, so please feel free throughout If there's a pause, throw your hand up, let me call on you, and ask your own questions of our candidates today. And I really do want to compliment Corey, and I want to compliment Sustainable Tulsa for even having a candidate forum with these candidates. Often issues that pertain to sustainability, we're talking public transit, walkability, bikeability, trash and recycling services. These often fall from an advocacy perspective to the mantle of the District 4 counselor. So thank you all for running. And before we begin, I do want to give a quick shout out our current sitting city councilor for District 4, Blake Ewing, if you could raise your hand. Councilor is here. Councilor Ewing is not running again after many years of wonderful service, and whoever takes that seat will certainly have big shoes to fill. So thank you, Councilor, for everything you've done for Tulsa. I will throw it to each of our candidates here. Daniel, we'll start with you. If you could give a quick few-minute introduction of yourself and some of your sustainability priorities and your thoughts on the issue in general.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Zach, for moderating. Thank you for Sustainable Tulsa for hosting. I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself and to get to know some of the issues that are obviously on the forefront of sustainable practices and interests here. So my name is Daniel Regan. I am a lifelong Tulsan, 4 generations of history as Tulsans in my family, and grew up in and around District 4 for most of my life. And it's really been an honor to step up and throw my hat in the ring with such great other candidates here. I think we joke that we've probably got the friendliest race around, and we all generally like each other and probably have a lot of similar interests. So I'm sure you'll hear a lot of the same things from each of us as we go through this discussion today and forum. So a little bit on me. I went to school actually here at TCC, Metro Campus. I got my associate's degree before it was popularized through the Tulsa Achieves program, but certainly a lot of people came before me in TJC's format and the TCC classes that have been served here for decades. But I worked my way through college, working and trying to get my associate's degree, then transferred it over to OSU Tulsa, again, before there was an Oklahoma promise, but trying to do 6 and 9 credit hours at night, as I could while I was working 40 to 60 plus hours a week to pay for it. Grew up with 3 younger brothers, and at 18 years old, it was kind of like, okay, kid, good luck. We encourage this, but figure it out, and gave myself hopefully a good education through our wonderful school systems here. I was very fortunate to work with a lot of adjunct professors who worked in industry and also taught, and I thought that was a great experience. I grew up also working in my family's business, a metal shop here in town that makes steel sculpture, and really have enjoyed the opportunity, as I was telling some other folks, learning at 10 years old to drill press and the value of every single penny and what it means to recycle your metal and your scraps and the value of that and what that can add to your bottom line at the end of the day and make sure that you can pay everybody a livable wage. That was something that I really cherish as a part of my upbringing, as something that I carry forward and really instilled some values in me that I carry through to my life, to this very day. And growing up, I've worked a number of careers, everything from in the service industry, over at one of my favorite restaurants here in the district, Palace Cafe, being their first employee and helping lay their flooring and upholster their first furniture, all the way up to current day, where I work for a property management and development company, a group that owns and rehabilitates a lot of our historic assets here in the district, things like the Phil K building, the Pythian building, converting recently the Trans Oak building to residential, working on some more residential reconversion, but taking advantage of things like historic tax credits and reusing as much as possible and finding value in our historical assets. And so a lot of that experience has lent itself to my perspective, my what I bring forward to the table. I've done a lot of nonprofit work over the years, and I'll try to keep it relatively brief, but working with Zach and others in the room as Tulsa's Young Professionals Chair in 2016, running their government relations crew and being on their board for the 3 years prior to serving on the executive committee, working with friends to bring back the Great Raft Race and restart the revival of the Raft Race, which is a great asset to our community. Currently serving on the Foundation for Tulsa Schools Board as a board member and somebody who's learning and giving back as I can to the education system and supporting that. Being one of the original advisory board members of the Fab Lab Tulsa, which is also in district. My first nonprofit board position and what I became president of eventually was TARC, working for citizens with developmental disabilities, and working in a number of really great nonprofits and organizations. And again, that's something that I hope to carry forward with part of my experience and what I bring to the table if I'm given the opportunity to represent the neighborhoods and citizens in District 4. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank this group for bringing us together today. This is a wonderful group to be talking to, and thank you, Zach, for agreeing to moderate. I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. So I'm a third-generation District 4 resident. Grew up in this district, know the streets quite well. I did leave for a time, started my company in Washington, D.C., and we started that 20 years ago. So I'm proud to have 20 years behind me working primarily with the federal government to help them make changes in how they communicate with citizens and consumers. I think of my job as being someone who brings groups together to make big changes. And that's something that I hope to bring to this job as well, which is bringing groups together, listening to stakeholders, and then making real sustainable plans to help the city move forward in positive ways. So I too, like Daniel, grew up in Tulsa. My family also owned a small business, Coney Islander, so you've probably heard about it or eaten there. I was not pressing metal. I was, putting wieners in buns when I was 10 years old. But I, too, had the joy of really being a part of a small business that grew in this city and became part of really the fabric of Tulsa. My grandfather was an immigrant from Greece, and he came here and decided that Tulsa was the place to be. He had such enthusiasm and such a respect for this city that he chose to make this his home and home for his family. So I'm excited to be a part of that ethnic community as well. Coming back to Tulsa was wonderful because Tulsa had changed in the not even that many years that I was gone, but I started to feel this new energy in Tulsa when I came back and really feeling the change and seeing people being excited about making Tulsa better and really putting Tulsa on the map. That was very exciting to me. When I had a child 5 years ago, that also changed my perspective. I started thinking about the future of Tulsa. How can I make a difference? How can I make an impact? What can I do as a person to make our city even better so that as she grows up, she has better opportunities? So these were the elements that came together to help push me into this race. And I'm excited to bring those skills and abilities here. I have my master's in organizational leadership, my PhD in leadership studies. I teach leadership at Gonzaga University, and I teach organizational communication at the University of Oklahoma. And I think I raise that because I think that those are also important skills to bring to a leadership position. And I'm excited about the opportunity to bring what I've learned. I like to think that theory is just theory. Where it really comes together is in practice. So the idea is, how do you bring these theories and really make them work in the messy real world that we live in? And that's what I hope to do. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking more.
First, thank you, Cody, for organizing this event. Zach, thank you for your time. Barbara, KJ, Daniel, and everybody, thank you for taking your time today and joining us. I am Juan Miret, and I was not born in Tulsa. I didn't grow up in Tulsa, and that's the reason that I have this cool accent. And I am originally from Venezuela, which, by the way, today is Venezuelan Independence Day. But what is really amazing about this is how come an immigrant from the Caribbean that arrived 17 years ago today can be here in the Creativity Center sharing this table with this awesome group of candidates running for office. That only happened in the US. And yes, our system And yes, our system has challenges. And when we vote, sometimes we think that the system is crafted to make it so difficult to vote. But it's so different when you're going to vote and you don't see a person with an AK-47 next to the ballot box. That's what makes sense. And that's the reason this country is amazing. And that's the reason that I love Tulsa, and that's the reason that Tulsa is home, is my home. It's also home for my daughter, which, by the way, Barbara, if I said that she's 5 years old and she's next to me, she corrected me. She said, I'm 5.5, Dad. 5.5. And it's really an amazing place, an amazing city to raise a family, to pursue your dreams, to build your business, to develop your career. I live in District 4, very close from here, but a few blocks. I work in District 4, the Kendall Whittier neighborhood. My daughter, she goes to a District 4 school that is Mayo demonstration school. Go Mayo, awesome. And again, it's a fantastic opportunity again for me as an immigrant to do this. In my country, I was a journalist, but with the beginning of the revolution, I very early realized that it was not possible to develop my career. And that was the reason that Tulsa was an opportunity. And how do you find Tulsa on the map from Venezuela? Well, because we have an awesome university, the University of Tulsa. That's a big magnet. And that's how we need to try, not only to attract that talent, those new voices, those immigrants and people from all over the planet, but also to retain it here, because we have so much to offer. My regular job is with a nonprofit that is based in the Kendall Whittier neighborhood, and we try to break the cycle of poverty of the children that attend Kendall Whittier Elementary, Sequoia, and Will Rogers. And my passion is education. And it's not just a cliche that you said education is the key that will open all doors, but it's a fact. When somebody gets a specific certification, a specialization, that's how you really can turn down all those barriers and build a brighter and better future. And that's what I want. Because you see a big difference, and I'm going to make example again for Mayo Demonstration School, but you see a big difference between Mayo and Kendall Whittier. And it's less than 1.5 miles, but the experience that the children are having in Mayo is awesome. And it is because it's a connection with the business sector. It has a foundation. The parent engagement is super high and incredible, but we don't see that just in less than 1.5 miles. And all the kids deserve the best. So I think from the City Council, we can approach this issue and we can make education more equitable. We don't have to wait the decision for Oklahoma City. We can do it from here. So that's one of the main points of my platform, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running. It's been so far a fantastic journey to run with all of you, the process for door knocking, to see the engagement that we're having. And also to have this conversation about sustainability. Because I believe that the next generation of Tulsans, your daughters and all the other children, they're going to ask those that were in position of leadership, what do you do? Did you do something to fix this mess? Did you do something to create options to save our environment? Or you just were sitting down, just occupying a seat? Because I believe if we are to have a future as a city, as a state, as a nation, and of course, as a planet, we need to connect 4 basic points. That is sustainable platforms, initiative, the corporate sector, the nonprofit sector, and the community. So with this, I would like to eventually just to engage with more conversation with all of you. It is a pleasure to be here. So thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Kara Joy McKee, and it's nice to be here with you all again this month. I've been to every Sustainable Tulsa First Thursday this year except for one, and Mike, I'm going to get the Perfect Attendance Award next year. On my 7th birthday, my parents brought big tubs of ice cream with cones to my first grade class. It was all sticky smiles and giggly fun, so sticky. And then everything changed. My teacher ran into the classroom, tears streaming down her cheeks. The Challenger had blown up. And the teacher on the Space Shuttle Challenger, Krista McCullough, she carried all our hearts with her that day, but I, the birthday girl, had imagined myself holding her hand and zooming off to the stars. My relationship with the world and with humanity changed that day. I could see us spinning on that tiny blue dot, and I began to wonder. I began to read, to question, to constantly learn, and to realize that we are making it harder for humans to get clean food and air and water. And I began to organize for change. And I've never stopped. In elementary school, I got styrofoam trays out of the cafeteria. In high school, we started organizing to start the first citywide recycling program. In college, I studied botany and anthropology. And while dreaming of how I, as a scientist, could help change the world and make it better, life threw me a little curveball. And it turned out that I was needed in city government. Now, I have voted every chance I've had since the day I turned 18, but when the mayor of Norman asked me to help revive the then dormant bicycle master plan advisory committee for the city, I was shocked. Me? Do I have to? I didn't think my voice mattered that much, but it turns out it did. It turns out that often the world is run by those who show up. Well, many of the people in this room, many of you, were founding Sustainable Tulsa. I was in Norman founding the Norman chapter of the Sustainability Network, and I was being mentored by my new Tulsa friends. I have done so much local food and food security work, from community gardens and food pantries to starting my own composting business and managing the statewide Oklahoma Food Cooperative. It's an online farmers market, and it's the first of its kind in the world. And I've helped on almost every other sustainability project you can think of. Trying, failing, trying again, regrouping, trying again, succeeding, trying again. Sustainability work takes tenacity and creativity. It takes all of us working together, and for me, it has meant a lifelong commitment. From small projects with friends to citywide and then statewide businesses and organizations, I have been trained and tested in leadership for this. I've spent the last 4 years traveling all over the state, working for the Oklahoma Policy Institute. It's a nonpartisan think tank. If you don't know it, look it up. All over the state, learning and teaching that a budget, or the lack of an adequate budget, is a moral decision. I've seen that we, Oklahomans, can use facts and data and compassion and sound strategy and whole big buckets of inspirational vision to come together, to work together, and we need everyone. We need everyone on board, not only making Tulsa even cooler and an even more beautiful place to live, we need to make Tulsa a place where it's easy to breathe. We can build all the bike lanes and all of the wonderful urban areas and world-class parks, but if we don't step up our air quality game, it won't matter. The heat sinks in downtown, the increasing prevalence of ozone alert days, they cause our children's asthma to increase. They make our allergies worse. Now, I don't want to offend anyone, so raise your hand if you love allergies. Okay, I am among good company. I hate allergies, y'all, but I love plants, obviously. And we can make allergies better if we decrease the bad ozone. We also need everyone to be ready when disaster strikes. I trained with the Department of Homeland Security in neighborhood triage, because you and I both know that the nation and even the state are not going to matter nearly so much as our neighbors. When the wind comes sweeping down the plains, or the floods from the river come, or the wild boars invade Gilcrease, or worse. You've read all the biographies of me and my esteemed competitors, and you've seen we've got a lot of great ideas, and I am enthusiastic about all of the ones that I've seen us put forward, and I've worked on most of them before. But I'm not running to do just one thing or to decide the agenda by myself in advance. These decisions should not be left to just a few powerful individuals. I'm running to learn what matters to you, all
Carrie, we've got
of
about
you.
5 seconds left.
5 seconds.
I apologize.
This is the last sentence, Zach. I'm there. So that we can work together so that everyone in the city is helping us innovate and vet and implement the solutions. I know that I can help bring Tulsans together for all Tulsans, diverse Tulsans, to make our home more compassionate, more resilient, prosperous, and sustainable. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Clearly, we have a very talented cast of candidates here. That's extremely exciting. I do want to ask one opening question, and then I'll throw it to the audience. To stay on schedule, we're going to try to limit it to 2 minutes, so watch in the back for Corey. She'll be holding up a sign, and I might interject if you get close to 2 minutes. Quick question. So talk to us about what Tulsa has done right in the realm of sustainability, and moving forward over the next decade, how do we become a national leader? And I'm going to start with Barbara this time, because we're going to do a little...
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what Tulsa has done right, and I'm going to look at you, Blake, I think is starting to really think cohesively about the city and the places that we're creating. And I think it's really important that we think about our city in terms of accessibility, in terms of how we can efficiently get people from one place to another, and how we can build places that people not only want to be, but that are better for job development, better for social development. So I think of sustainability as being almost even bigger than just environmental, but also how are we taking care of people economically? How are we taking care of people socially? How are we taking care of people environmentally? So as we think about the city, I think we need to think about it in a planned way. And I think we're starting to see that. Not just letting development happen, but thinking about how we can help manage that process, how we can plan that process, how we can make our spaces better and enrich us economically, socially, and environmentally. So I think that's a way that we are starting to move as a city. I want to continue that work. I think cities have great power to shape our urban spaces for good or for bad. And I think with that power comes great responsibility to do it well, to enrich our citizens with the choices that we're making, and to do that in a planned way.
Thank you. Juan?
Well, first, our city has a sustainable plan that actually was issued in 2011. It's a massive document, almost 300 pages, about 60 initiatives that started back under Mayor Taylor's administration when she created this task force. And then eventually in 2009, we got a $4 million funding from the federal government for the Department of Energy. But some of these initiatives are still part of that document. And some of them that hasn't been developed yet. So what I think what is necessary is, again, to connect those 4 dots that I mentioned earlier, when you have the corporate sector, when you have the community that are the one putting in place this and moving this forward, the nonprofit sector too. And with these 3, you produce the change to have not only an option for sustainability, but something that makes sense and that bring change. One example could be, and this is something that happened, but we need it more, when we talk about the food desert areas, or we talk about the urban heat islands that we have. Eugene Field, just across the river. And it's an example that how all these components, these four, were put together.
About 10 seconds.
And they create an urban food forest. They put the corporate sector, in this case Buscovanta, with a nonprofit up with trees, and create a science class that now is producing fruit and reducing the temperature. So this is like an example of how it's possible.
Thank you. KJ.
Yeah. What has Tulsa done right? Well, so much. People love living in Tulsa, and for good reason. And we have a lot of really good plans, but as Juan mentioned, sometimes the plans get made, but the implementation is lacking. I agree with Barbara that we are starting to change that. New things are happening. I really love the city meetings that have been happening. A good meeting is empowering, a bad meeting is soul-sucking, right? And the opportunities in the Pearl District and Crosby Heights and Crutchfield, where neighbors have been coming together and helping say, this is where I want some green space. You know, this is where I think we need some more changes to intersections. Those have been really good, but also I'm seeing our city starting to do a really great job of using data and integrating all of the different data sources that we have to make really good decisions. So both the people and the information, bringing those things together, I think we're getting better at that. We need to improve our inclusivity. There's still a lot of Tulsans who feel left out. I think our new resiliency plan is going to be a big help to that. Resilience is certainly both the people and the environment. I'm hearing a lot of need for more green spaces. And we also need to work a lot on infrastructure. People want to get out and about and be a part of the life outdoors, but there are certain parts of Tulsa where that's really not possible, or it doesn't feel safe. And sometimes it is safe, but it doesn't feel safe, and we need to be able to change that. So I think there's a lot that we've done, but there's also a lot we can do. Yeah.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, I would echo again what a lot of the people here at the table have said, which is we plan really well. I mean, hailing back to Dr. Crowley and looking at the sustainable plan and the GO plan and the downtown area master plans and the plan at Tulsa, we do a lot of planning, and really action on those plans is where this next step is. I think we've allowed for innovation, and I think that's something we've done really well. I look back to things like allowing TIPROs to do a dedicated bike lane down 11th Street while I was the chairman of it, and saying, hey, what would a dedicated bike lane look like if we were able to secure it and to make it accessible for people to come from TU to downtown and to our Cherry Street district and other areas by an interconnected bike lane that is protected and secured. Would that encourage the use of these types of things? And so that innovation and allowing for that innovation is something that I think we do really, really well. And so it's just taking it that next step further and putting the resources in place and saying, you know what, the next GO Bond package, I'm going to make sure that that's a significant portion of the funding. It's not just going to go to streets, but it's going to go to streets in a very innovative and forward-thinking way. And that we're going to make sure that these types of innovations and these types of plans where people have put hard work, come to the table and said, I want my voice to be heard and this is what we want to see in our city, that those things are happening. And some of them are small wins. It's wayfinding signs. I mean, it's just putting up a little bit of signage in an area and saying, hey, guess what? 2 minutes this way in a walking distance, you can be at this really cool space. And encouraging people in, again, low-cost ways, I think we can have some real small wins here that will be very valuable in helping to be sustainable and making sure that we're forward-thinking in the way that we're using our money.
Great. So at this time, I would love any audience questions. Just raise your hand if you have anything you'd like to ask. Yeah, I see one.
Sustainability is more than just environmental programs, but I'm going to ask you an environmental question. The city of Tulsa already has environmental programs within it, many different ones. What is the most important to you, and how would you advocate to District 4 and other Tulsans?
So the question is the most important environmental programs in the city? Yep. We'll start with Juan this time.
Well, as I was saying earlier, we have several of these initiatives that has put in place. And but they need not only the action part, but really connect the sense of why we're doing this, what is the reason behind this. We know that in the original plan, the one drafted in 2011, they talk about how efficient can you do with managing the waste, right? And however, at that time, the administration were not such a data-driven administration, so it was difficult to measure the impact of this initiative and how you can make adjustment in the middle. One example could be, because that's also part of the plan, was the installation, and it's a very low cost, of sensor in the waste receptacles, in the waste bin, the waste container, that can send daily that notification to the waste management administration. So you are managing the waste in a smart way with smart technology, very low cost. So you don't have to wait until the next cycle, the next Thursday, the next Friday to pick up the trash, that send that signal there. The recollection of that trash, and also for recycling, is very helpful, because you don't want to participate when you see the bags of the recycled thing on the ground instead of inside the container. And this is an example that I'm just taking for the existing plan. It just need to be adopted with the current technology that we have, that is a very low cost and actually will increase the participation. The issue that we have here, as we have described, we have incredible, awesome initiative, but it's time to put that in action, and we cannot wait anymore. There is a type of leadership that we need. We need to do it now. We cannot wait 7 years. We cannot wait 10 years. We have to do it now, and we have the tools, and we have the corporate sector and the nonprofit that want to be part of that.
Thank you. KJ.
When I decided to run for office, I started touring. I toured Mohawk and AB Jewel, our water facilities. I started riding the bus. I started trying to experience what we have already for myself, and eventually my campaign team stopped me and said, just go knock doors. Get out there and meet the voters. There are a whole lot of really important programs that we have, and one of the things I notice is that many Tulsans don't know about what we already have, and I think that there's a lot we could do with regard to PR and communications to help people. When it comes to something that I think could level us up quickly, as Daniel was talking about, sometimes signage, sometimes that communication part is one of the biggest issues, and improving our transportation infrastructure so that someone in a wheelchair can get down the sidewalk, someone can walk their stroller to the park, someone can get on a bus and know exactly which way they are going before they get on the bus, and we can have the bicycle infrastructure and the walkability. I think that can make it a lot better, really right away. But I love the city government, and I'm really excited to tour all of the other facilities. So again, I don't want to set the agenda in advance. After elected, I want to study absolutely everything that is already happening and learn more from you all about which programs you think need the most love. I'm very personally committed to advocating.
Okay, thanks. Daniel?
Thank you, and I would echo, I think everybody here at the table doesn't want to have a top-down leadership style. We want your voice to be at the table, and I think we've got a long history, and as you said, big shoes to fill in making sure that we have town halls that engage and encourage people to come out, and that we aren't really reactive to these issues or aren't asking you to be reactive, but are being proactive and bringing them to you and saying, hey, let's talk about this. Let's, in a fun, civil, calm manner as best we can, and I know some issues get more heated than others, but let's have a sit down and really have everybody at the table to try to find the best solution. Because when you're looking at things from multiple perspectives, when you're bringing people in that are seeing it from a different angle and you're working together to try to find the best solution, that's when you're going to get your best result. That's when you're going to get the best idea that will come forth, is when you really have a collaborative conversation. So I think everybody at the table agrees that that's how we want to be served and that's how we want to serve. Specific to the question on most important environmental programs, that's a tough question. There are a lot of really good programs. I think back to like the KPMG study and that study and the programs that spun out of it say you need to do these things, take advantage of the PSO's rebates and do light conversion in your facilities. Look at things like your mass transit system. And for me, I was a big part of helping to advocate and be part of the original group that really put together some of what the BRT ended up being, the bus rapid transit system, building the first prototype actually in our metal shop and putting it out at 36th Street North and saying, hey, as part of street cred, could we put a little dedicated bus line into downtown, and would it be used, and does that help show prove the point that this is something that mass transit that people want and that they want to be part of. And so looking at transit and Go Plan and some of those systems, those are really valuable to me, and I think we've still got a long way to go and a lot of opportunity there.
Thank you. Barbara.
Thank you. I can only agree with my fellow candidates that we don't want this to be top-down. Smart growth starts from learning what your users, and in this case, what the citizens want and need. I think the most important thing that we can continue to work on is elements like transit, like walkability, and increasing those scores, because we are a city that has cars built into our DNA. And it's going to be hard to move away from that when we're not built as a city to allow walking, to allow biking, to allow better transit. And I know when I started this process, I began riding the bus as well with my 5-year-old daughter, and it was at times frightening, almost getting hit by cars. We have to make this a safe and viable alternative. We have to give transit options that allow people to get the car DNA out of their system to move beyond that. And I think that starts with talking to citizens. I think that starts with usability studies. I think it starts with really looking at how we use our transit and how we can make it better. So that's something that I'm particularly excited about because I think that can touch everyone.
So, and I had a couple of people actually ask about this beforehand, and a couple of you mentioned, so I want to dive a little bit deeper into this walkability, bikeability, public transit conversation, and talk a little bit about how specifically, so we've got a bus rapid transit up Peoria Avenue about to be implemented. We've got a Route 66 bus rapid transit coming down the pike. We have a walkability study that's been completed downtown that recommended certain ways that we can change downtown streets to make them more walkable and bikeable, and we've got bike lanes going up all over downtown. So what is the next step? How do we, whether it be zoning, form-based code, whether it be increased funding for Tulsa Transit, how do you propose that we further increase walkability, bikeability, and getting around town without a car? And going to KJ starting first.
Sure. Well, like you said, we've got a lot of plans and we've got a lot of implementation going on that front. When I was at the University of Oklahoma, I started the first bicycle lending library with a bunch of friends in a garage, just taking donations. And then we held community bike rides. There were already folks doing critical mass. That was a little confrontational. And so we did a community bike ride that was more like a tour of some of the highlights around town. And getting people in a group to go seemed to really reduce that fear factor, and suddenly we had more commuter bicyclists. When we were trying to get people to start using the loop and using the buses, we started having parties on the buses. We actually experimented with things like musicians and jugglers and comedians on the buses to get people excited about going to the buses. Comedians, not so good. Juggling, also a little tough. I'm not recommending those. But you know, there are a lot of things we could do advocacy-wise to help people want to decide to change from car culture, actually using those beautiful bikes that we built last weekend. I think that there's a lot we can do on the advocacy side to get other people excited, and that will help us know where to go next.
Okay, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it really is being forward-thinking. I mean, what does transit look like in 10 years? What does it look like in 20 years? How are we planning and preparing for that? When you think of how technology is really changing the landscape, and the way that that's going to shape our environment in our generation, nevertheless, the generations that come right after us. And so being forward-thinking and innovative and really using data and best practices, too. We don't have to recreate the wheel every time. You know, it's not necessary. There are other cities that are out there doing really good work on this front. And so let's work to, you know, build upon what they've already proven. And let's look forward to what experts say the environment's going to look like and plan for that. And really not just plan for that, but implement for that. And so I think, you know, even to, and this probably isn't in that same theme, but you know, where are we putting our resources? And in the last vision package, we put some money together for a transit hub. And I think a transit hub, in whatever format that looks like going forward, and whatever those transit issues are that we need to be prepared for, making sure that we're continuing to push that momentum, that we just don't have $1 million+ sitting around, you know, for planning and for maybe purchasing some property, but that we're actually putting our money where our mouth is and saying, this is something we as a community said we want to have, and let's make sure that we're looking at what the future will hold and planning for that accordingly.
Yeah, thank you. Barbara.
You know, when I think about, I agree with Daniel that we need to be looking down the line. We don't need necessarily more and more proliferation of plans. And we have collected some excellent data. We have an excellent walkability study that has given us some really good guidance on the directions that we should be going in. I think that what we need to do now is really start focusing on how we're going to implement and create some of these new methods and new places and new spaces. There are excellent grant programs, Partners for Places, ICLEI. You can go and actually build your plan and get money and get a public-private grant matching program to start putting some of these in place. I also want to take a moment to talk about something that I think is a place we should be looking at, which is our building codes and permitting processes. We know that it's cheaper to build things sustainably from the beginning than it is to retrofit them later. And I think that's something, as we're developing mixed use, as we're moving in that direction, to look at how our codes and our zoning is supporting that. So that's something that I think as a city we can continue to do to move ourselves in the right direction for this new type of city that's more accessible, more walkable, delivering more to our citizens in terms of transit.
I will add that it's not only inviting people to the table to take decision, but actually is the part of inclusion, so they can have a tangible saying in this. We are ahead in the game into a specific sector that is for the public transportation and also for our airport. And that is because we have stolen from Kansas City the head of this department, and now they are part of our city. So the idea for the best practices is great because we know what have worked and we can implement it now. And an example of how something, when you use technology that is already available and fix a problem, we are seeing it. The parking system, how you pay for parking. Now our city have developed an app. You still can use the coins, you still can use your card, but that is a problem that was existing there and how it was resolved. So again, like we have said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just identifying those best practices and put it in place. And always thinking forward for the city that we want to live in, including, again, not only inviting the voices, but including them for the decisions.
Thank you. And we are really running out of time, but I do want to squeeze one more audience question. I know we had a hand in the back. If we can maybe cut a deal where we answer in 1 minute each. We got to run out. Okay, Dr. Schumann in the back.
That's a great question, and I've been reading up, and District 4 has some of the highest lead-based pipelines in the whole city, and that is a serious concern. We've got to address that issue. To me, that is one of our, really biggest problems in weight that we aren't fully, haven't fully tackled. I would say that is a huge issue. I'd also say, and this is countywide, but our levees. We have very dire need of, we're in very dire need of updates to our levees. And we've got to work on the federal level, on the state level, on the county level, hand in hand to push that with the same messaging. So I would say, again, to pick one is very tough, but both of those are critical issues in my book.
Great, thanks, Barbara.
I think infrastructurally, I'm always concerned about how ready we are to respond to disasters. We all know that our climate is changing. It's creating variability that cities are not prepared to deal with. I think that that's something that we need to be looking at directly as a city. How do we build contingencies? How do we do that from electric to water, all of our public systems? We all remember the ice storm. That was just an ice storm. It could be worse. I think that's something that as a city, we need to continue to really put focus on.
I will say here is transparency and accountability for those on the table, because it is important, it's really important, and again, this is not a cliche, it's really important to include those voices, especially for the big infrastructure changes, that sometimes it can be big when you're trying just to modify a specific face or feeling for a neighborhood, as it can be a huge impact for the streets. So again, you need to be transparent, the process, very open, and I think we're in that direction because we're using data and with all the public forums. But to have this conversation for such a critical issue, transparency, it have to be at the top and holding those accountable.
Absolutely. As usual, all four of us are in agreement. And I sometimes wonder if there might not be some low-hanging fruit, some solutions that the community could help with more. I have seen us at times let the perfect get in the way of good, of just the good, and there are some things that we need to get done right away. It's actually not okay to let children to drink water with lead in it at all. If the levees break and the river floods, it's going to be a problem immediately. Sometimes we have to have stopgap measures, and I think that Tulsa needs to build a willingness to let the community be a part of that, whether that's WPA-style projects like what my grandfather was a part of, even the Better Ways project, or a Better Way project with the mental health department could be a solution, but really figuring out how we address those things. And yeah, the transparency, the disaster preparedness, and the water quality all have to be there. Just vote for all four of us, I mean.
Well, everybody help me give our panelists a round of applause. And I will throw it back to Corey, but I do want to say that I think it's clear we have a handful of city council races August 28th here in Tulsa. This is clearly a very strong pool of candidates, probably the strongest pool of candidates of any seat going on right now. So thank you all again for joining us. Corey?
And let's give Zach a round of applause for his moderation today. Thank you. I'm going to thank each of you for your thoughtful responses and preparing for today, and we wish you all luck in this season. Thank you all for coming and being interested and engaging in this process, and hopefully there'll be some other opportunities out there to do that, and make sure you get out there and vote. We do have just a couple of giveaways to be more sustainable. Reusable water mugs. So there's two here, and I will call up. We've got Stephanie Cameron, actually. All right. Okay. Woo, woo, woo. And Julie Tattershaw. Okay, come on down. We'll see you here next month, and the topic will actually be water. So it'll be interesting. All right, thank you all so much.